Good evening, everyone. Appreciate everybody coming out to our regular November meeting with the Clay County Board of Education. Ms. Kelly Crawford is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, and we have the flag on the screen there. So.
Everybody would stand and remove their hats. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kelly. Mr. Colbert, if you don't mind reading Clay County Schools mission statement, please.
The mission of Clay County Schools is to build high-quality learning environments that ensure all students learn at high levels.
And this month, the only announcement we have is our regular board meeting will be December the 13th. And I will entertain a motion that you approve the agenda as it was emailed to you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, second. All in favor?
Aye.
I guess before we do public comment, obviously, just to note, Mr. Jones had sent a message that unfortunately he couldn't be here this evening, so he's not going to be in attendance, so I apologize I didn't do that before. Next we have public comment. Mr. Paul Rose, reminder you have 3 minutes.
I always try. I think I usually make it. Paul Rose. I was very encouraged by Mr. Cole's comments at the last regular meeting about the curriculum planning committee, to put together a committee to participate in planning the curriculum. And based on that comment, of course, I wanted to find out a little bit more about it, how that process actually worked. So I went to the school board, or the Board of Education policy manual, and it found several pertinent areas. Curriculum development is policy code 3100, and I won't read the whole thing, you've already got it. It says that the board further recognizes that while educators must be responsible for developing the curriculum, parents, other government agencies, businesses, and members of the public have valuable insights into the type of curriculum. The committee must also seek input from parents, the community, and experts in order to make fully informed decisions. And it also states the committee also may recommend eliminating subject areas or objectives that are not state required. They got to be state required. I knew you were going to bring that back. Okay. Can I take that for my 3 minutes? Subject areas or objectives that are not state required or related to the educational goals of the board. Policy Code 3000, Goals and Objectives of the Educational Program. It is very, very well written. It has a lot of good stuff in there. It says the board recognizes, again, the critical role of parents, government, blah, blah, blah. In that list of 12 specific items to receive a sound basic education, only one of those talks to anything or refers to anything culturally related. Item 6 says foster respect and appreciation for cultural and ideological diversity and differences. So that's the extent that it goes as far as anything culturally related. So as I understand the stated policy, the superintendent will create a curriculum planning committee composed of both school professionals as well as community members who play a role in actually planning the curriculum. Of course, it must meet state standards with the emphasis on providing, again, a basic education. As the only item stated in the goals and objectives of this educational program touching on cultural aspects says foster respect and appreciation for cultural and ideological diversity and differences. It specifically does not include what and how that diversity is defined or assign values or comparisons to any aspect of that diversity or differences. As the details spelled out in the currently state-approved learning objectives go far beyond that objective, I imagine this is where the community may differ with what could be rolled into that educational program. With all this in mind, and in the interest of transparency, I imagine the board would take a lean forward position and ensure the community in general knows how and when this planning committee will be created. Will the board seek volunteers or merely appoint community members? Confident this will be made public knowledge in sufficient time to allow for valid and useful community input and participation through volunteers. Okay, I owe you 15 seconds.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Next, we have recognitions. Mr. Oberlin. Ms. Madison Logan.
All right, with us tonight we have Madison Logan, the senior at Hayesville High School. Madison is here with her father, Chris Logan, and we wanted to just brag on her for a moment about not only her second place state finish at the North Carolina golf tournament, but also just her entire career. Madison has been a 3-time regional champion. Obviously, she got second. She was runner-up in the entire state of North Carolina just a couple of weeks ago. And she's just been a fantastic student, makes fantastic grades, takes all the toughest classes we offer, and has a really bright future ahead of her. So I'd like to give Madison this, and let's give her a round of applause. Tell us what's next for you. You can't just leave. You gotta I can leave, but you can't.
I am planning on playing golf for Western Carolina University and obtaining my business degree. And then I currently have my private pilot's license, so I'm wanting to build up enough hours to fly commercially.
Yes.
Thank you.
Get a picture for the gram, you know? Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Ravonda Palmer with the Career and Technical Education Internships.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ravonda Palmer. I'm the CT Director for Clay County Schools. And tonight we have some of our students with us. They have been participating in our work-based learning program, and they have been doing some internships and a job shadow with some of our local businesses. But before we get started, I'd like to thank these local businesses for giving our students this wonderful opportunity. Jackie Jones Ford, Stillwater Landing Farms, the Chamber of Commerce, Blue Ridge Mountain EMC, and Big Bear Veterinary Clinic. The first couple of guys we have up are Caleb Birch and David Green. They did their internship with Jackie Jones Ford. Come on in.
Hello, I'm Caleb Birch.
I'm David Green.
We've been interning at Jackie Jones Ford in Hayesville. They've helped us learn a lot down there. We've learned a lot about just automotive industry in general, really.
Yeah, how the workflow is there and just some of the basics.
Yeah. We'd really like to thank Connor and Bryce Champion down there at the Ford place. They've really helped us learn a lot down there.
What do you guys think you've learned by doing a work-based learning opportunity like this that you would not have learned in class?
Just working in the whole environment, just being in a shop, working with our hands, knowing how the flow is and how stuff comes in the door and when to get it out.
And how many hours a day were you there?
I'm working about 5, unless we don't have school that day. Then I'm working about the full 8-9 hours.
Yeah, and I'm working 2 hours a day until we're not in school.
Are both of you planning to work in the automotive field when you graduate?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
I do too. That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nash Farmer. He has been doing an internship at Blue Ridge Mountain EMC. He would like to be a lineman one day.
Hey, my name's Nash Farmer. I've been interning at Blue Ridge Mountain EMC, and it's really helped me a lot, and I could spend all night telling you stuff that I've learned over there. Everything from working out in the field, overhead and underground construction, We'll dig ditches or hang transformers, pulling wire, and sometimes I'll be working in the warehouse with Jason Robinson, and we will get trucks in, and I've learned how to unload the truck and process all the paperwork, and once the truck is unloaded, put all the material up and get it where it needs to go. And some of the other things I've done is learn how to operate some equipment around there, like a forklift and the line truck and just different things like that.
Nash, do you think this opportunity has motivated you as far as giving you like a direction for after high school that has kind of maybe motivated you to really, in your other classes, kind of know what the purpose is now?
Yeah.
Being able to draw a line between what we're asking you to do in your regular classes and what you're going to be doing when you get out?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not a question, but I'm a little biased because I work at Blue Ridge Mountain EMC and I can see Nash there, and he has been able to explore lots of things, so he's been such an asset.
That's great.
Congratulations.
Nice job,
That's good.
Good job, Nash.
Next, we have the Chamber of Commerce. Tia Proctor could not be with us today, so Ms. Kleiss is going to speak on her behalf. I hope I got your name right. So come on and tell us about Tia and what all she's doing.
I didn't want to miss the opportunity to brag on Tia a little bit. Tia is down in Orlando with a cheer competition, and Tia actually started with us in June. So she came in and volunteered 2 to 3 days a week, and then she came on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every afternoon from 1:30 till 5. So she has been a major player as a team player with the Chamber of Commerce and the Welcome Center. She started off as kind of shy and a little quiet, and now she's the first one out of the seat. She's welcoming the new citizens. She's meeting with the businesses, and she's just warm and friendly and has been received from the community that way. In addition to that, she's taken on a program with us that we are migrating all of our data from our membership, and it's moving into an entire computer software program. And Tia has led that collection of the data, working with the businesses, and she's going to see that come to see how she did, because we're going to migrate this week. So what a wonderful project to be from the beginning and take it to the end. In addition, Tia filled out an application and was accepted in the Leadership Chattooga program. She was with that program for 12 weeks, interfacing with leaders from, our state senators. One of the things that was so neat, Tia made sure that she went and sat with a different adult each week rather than sitting with the other teenagers and connecting with those people. And several of them kept saying, when is she done at the chamber? We'd like to hire her. So what a neat thing. She also participated in helping us prepare for events. One of those, of course, being the Pumpkin Chunkin', which was huge for Tia. And then she followed up and volunteered and worked, brought her mother, her sister, and then participated with the Candy Cane Market. So we have seen her go from a self-starter independent work to working with grown adults in a teamwork setting. So it's been an outstanding experience, and I just wanted to encourage you that this intern, it's just great. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to be working with Laura. I want to put together a challenge for every member of the Chamber of Commerce to host an intern from Hayesville High School. So I'm going to figure out how to get into a meeting and challenge all of them to do that. So hopefully we'll grow.
Absolutely.
Well, next up we have 2 students. They're brother and sister. They've been doing an internship at Stillwater's Landing Farm. We have Kristen, Cody, and Isaac.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen Cody.
My name is Isaac.
I was fortunate enough to participate in a work-based learning program at Stillwater's Landing, and I was able to earn a paycheck plus a portion of the weekly crop. Working at Stillwater's Landing gave me a bigger picture of the agriculture industry, which you can see on my PowerPoint. I would like to thank everyone at Stillwater's Landing and the teachers who assisted me with this project. It was a great opportunity. Thank you.
We have learned a bunch of different stuff about fertilizers and high tunnel or greenhouse. You can plant stuff in there year round. And we got to use a bunch of different tools. And that's about it.
Well, hopefully you're going to continue and learn all the different ways you can make a living in that field as well. So, that's good. Have any questions?
I was just going to ask, how long was the internship? Or is
When
it
did
still
we start?
It's ongoing?
Are both of you planning to do something in an agriculture-related field, or?
Well, maybe.
Maybe. I'm not going to hold you accountable to it.
I'll brag on them. They're very hard workers and fast learners, and if I were looking for somebody full-time, I wouldn't hesitate hiring one of them. They were still are excellent, show up every day, right on time, work hard the whole time. I can tell them to do something, show them one time, they've got it. So,
And that's all we can ask for, isn't it?
I'm very pleased.
It's great to hear.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we have an 8th grader with us tonight, and she has been doing a job shadow for the Big Bear Veterinary Clinic, and she goes every Saturday. And Miss Lily Dockery is going to share with you her job shadowing experiences. Come on, Lily.
My name is Lily Dockery, and I've been job shadowing at Big Bear Vet in Hayesville. I'm sorry. And what I've been doing there is I've been like watching them do stuff, and I've helped clean kennels, and I've cleaned exam rooms. I've helped trim nails and stuff, and I've held animals for Dr. Lawlor to do vaccines. And the worst thing I've got to see is her cutting off puppy tails and toes. That's horrible. But I felt so bad for the puppies too, and they screaming. And I've also got to see a mass on a dog's eyelid, and I've seen a mass in a cat's throat that the owner didn't want to take it out because it would come back and be bigger, so they had to put it down. And I've also got to see X-rays of a cat's intestines and a dog's heart, and sorry. I've also got to see how she does scratches, how she tries to find scratches on animal eyes, and I never knew that's how you do it. I didn't know you could look for scratches on the eye that could possibly lead them to be blind. And so far, 3 out of 4 times that I've been there, they've had to put an animal down every time I'm there. And I actually got to see what ear mites look like underneath a microscope, and they look like huge stink bugs. It's horrible. And I also got to see what roundworm is, and I never knew there was something called roundworm until I was there, and it's a weird process to find that. I don't think you want to know what the process is. And that's about it.
So now, did you go into this because you were thinking of being a veterinarian?
Yeah, I wanted to be a veterinarian my whole life, and I watch veterinarian shows, and when I would like see a puppy on the road or like a dog, I feel so bad for them because if it was like sick, I could do something to help it. And
So I was a middle school principal and had a lot of conversations with career exploration with 7th and 8th graders in the past. And I found that lots of times my middle school students had sort of this romanticized notion of what veterinarians were and what they did, and they didn't know that they cut puppies' tails off and that they, had to put...
I didn't know they did that.
So what I'm getting at is right now, do you still want to be a vet?
Yeah,
because that's kind of the purpose of this, is to explore it and really see what it's all about.
Yeah, it's further inspired me to become one. And it's
Go ahead.
It's not really disgusting once, because my papa, we kill chickens. So.
Okay.
It's not that bad.
So are you, this is sort of the same question I asked one of our other students. So now are you seeing connections between what a veterinarian does in their work and what you learn in your science classes? And it'll even be more so when you get to your high school science classes. But you starting to see kind of the connections between now and the future?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
I just want to take a second to thank all the students that came out and for our sponsors to giving our students these wonderful opportunities of internships. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
And I know I've said this before, but I want to reiterate that the best ambassadors that Clay County Schools has are our students. And the more we can get our students out in the community doing work, even to service projects, the better.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you for coming. Oh my goodness. It's not just about as exciting as I'm telling you. That's, man.
I also think, I'm pretty sure we doubled the internship opportunities from last year already. So I'm hoping to grow that every year.
It's starting out in middle school with the job setting until it's just a wonderful experience.
Next one, Mr. Worthy with AIG.
It's hard to follow that, isn't it, Ms. Worley?
It is, but I got to see a couple of my kiddos up there, so I hear about a couple of my kiddos. So I'm Kimberly Worley, and I want to give an update on the academically and intellectually gifted program. First of all, I have some stats. Right now, we have 89 total AIG students identified in grades 4 through 12. We've added 34 new students so far this school year. This month I've screened 82 fourth grade students, and we will be following up with 27 of those students to take the full COGAT in the next few weeks pending parent permissions. So we'll be adding to that number. The next screening groups that I'll be doing will be students in grades 5 through 7 who weren't screened last year during our universal screenings, either due to their remote status or they are new students this year. So we should be caught up very soon on our testing. So looking at each individual school and how the students are served, at our primary school we do something called talent development because we don't identify students at the primary school level. So right now I'm working with first and second grade students who have been identified as top readers. So I'm serving them through small reading groups. So right now we're working on reading, and soon we'll be working on writing as well. And I'll start working with the kindergarten students during the third quarter.
So those top readers, essentially, they're doing small group reading groups with you on books that are more complex or at a higher level than...
They're getting double reading groups. They do reading groups with their teacher, but I'm pulling them again just to do some extra reading groups with other top readers. So they're from all the classes, so they can come together in a group with other top readers. So they'll have a little bit more challenging work to do and a little bit more engaging conversation. So it's 1 or 2 students from each classroom.
Okay.
At the elementary school, our 3rd graders aren't identified because we don't have EOG scores yet. So I'm doing some science lesson rotations from one class to the other. I just finished up with like a skeleton and muscular system lesson. So those rotations are fun to do with some STEM activities. The 4th and 5th grade students are served, right now we're doing book clubs, and we'll end those book clubs with STEM projects. We're reading Stuart Little and the Lemonade War right now. It's a lot of fun, lots of vocab lessons. And I also started advanced math clubs in the 4th and 5th grade. Those actually started today, and those are for the students who scored level 5 last year on their math EOGs. That's something we do per North Carolina legislation. So the students are doing some advanced math, but they're also doing a PBL project. They're creating math board games. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those turn out.
And PBL is project-based learning?
Project-based learning, sorry. Explain my acronyms. At the middle school, our 6th and 7th graders are also doing some book clubs right now. We're reading Among the Hidden and Hoot. And those books have some problems or topics that can be applied to present day situations in the world, like overpopulation and environmental issues. So there's lots of good conversations that come out of those books. So we have some interesting talks, and we're able to pull up some current events and watch those as well as we read the books. And our 8th graders, and this was by their choice, we're learning about debate and the art of debate. So we've watched an actual middle school debate competition. We're learning the rules of debate, and soon they'll be able to learn how to form teams, choose appropriate topics, and how to prep for a debate, and then actually debate against each other. So they're looking forward to doing that, and we're just learning together because I know nothing about debate, but I'm learning along with them, and we're having a lot of fun watching those competitions, breaking it down, and brainstorming topics that we can explore in the future. And at the high school, I serve as the Beta Club sponsor. Our officers have been elected, and we are planning for an induction in December, and service projects to follow. And last but not least, every 3 years you have to rewrite your AIG plan, and this is our rewrite year. So I've been participating in trainings through the North Carolina DPI on the updated state standards, and I'm currently gathering input from our stakeholders to plan the rewrite. So my goal is to present that plan to the board in May for approval so we can submit by June to DPI.
Good.
Any questions?
That's, very good. Thank you, Ms. Word.
You're welcome.
So you have the Hazel Primary School library installation.
Yes. So members of the board, you actually, I added this, I got it right at the end of the day from our young office representative. Copies of the furniture that we're going to be purchasing. It is part of this slideshow, I believe. Adrian? Yes. So you can see it there. One of the things that wasn't a part of the primary school plan was to have a library. So the primary school is the only school we have that doesn't have a library. And Ms. Clemens and I felt like that was something that we needed to remedy if at all possible. We don't have a big sort of classic media center space because it wasn't part of the architectural drawings. But what we do have is an overly large classroom that is sort of a resource room that is close by the gym. It's on the main hallway, so it's very accessible to all 3 of the grade levels. And so what we've done is put together a plan for sort of sort of a one class at a time library. And you could probably squeeze 2 small classes in there at the same time if you really wanted to. But we have purchased books, and we're going to purchase some more books over the next few years. But this is the furniture setup and plan that we're going to put in place in that room so that we have a one classroom or sort of a one class at a time library at the primary school for students to be able to go to, pick out their books, learn how to navigate a library, and to also either sit down on the rug. You'll see the round circle rug where there's a whiteboard and a chair. So in that spot, that's sort of a sit down and listen to someone read spot as a group. The S shape there, those are bookshelves. They're double-sided bookshelves. And then on both walls, anything that's gray, those are bookshelves. On the other side of the S shelves, you'll see tables with 4 stools at each. And so that's where you could split kids up into different groups where they're reading different books if you wanted to, and you wanted to do more of a team activity in the library, you could do that. And in the top left-hand corner, you can see that we've added like a little loft area that they can climb up and be on the top, or they can be underneath. We're going to be using bean bags at the top, and then we have sort of rocking chairs underneath. So we designed that together, and we feel like that's going to be a great addition to the primary school. And this is the last thing that we're going to be buying from the state lottery needs-based grant that the county applied for and got to actually build the school. So we had enough money left over in the grant that we had not spent yet that we were able to do this. So now ordering it is one thing, getting it is another in this time. So it may be about 20 weeks out before we actually get this furniture. But maybe we'll get it sooner, we'll see. But the order is supposed to be placed tomorrow. So.
And this would just be for like teachers to take them in there. We're not gonna have like a, per se, a librarian.
We're not going to have a librarian in there right now. We're going to have a desk set up and a checkout system. But essentially, the way we check out books now, all of our books are barcoded, and we have a scanner, and it's kind of like going to the grocery store, you know. So we just kind of teach our kids how to look for books, and then how to go up to the counter and scan it, and they can actually check it out themselves. And then we'll have a rolling drawer, basically, that when they come in, they can drop their return books on that counter. And we'll probably have one of our teacher assistants or someone that'll be assigned to kind of put books back on the shelves periodically.
No Dewey Decimal System.
No, we're kind of getting away from the Dewey Decimal System. We've got a different system that we use now for the most part.
Can people donate books?
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? Very good, thank you, Mr. Brown.
It's all okay. The kids are gonna love it.
Next we have the elementary school improvement plan, Ms. Scott.
And this is the action part of the agenda, so the board will have to vote to approve these.
Hello. I brought company today. This is Berkeley Chastain. She's our school improvement team chair, as voted on by her colleagues and peers, and she's doing a fabulous job at that. Although this whole speaking in front of the board thing is new for her, so I told her, so we're going to tag team it today. We tried to spruce up our PowerPoint with a little Thanksgiving vibe right here before Thanksgiving. We're going to start just with our mission and vision, and
So we know that this has to be rewritten during the 2021-22 school year. It's one of our goals this year. But the current mission and vision that we have, our mission states that we strive to educate students and to assist them in realizing their full potential as responsible, productive, contributing members of society by providing an educational environment in which all students are challenged, excellence is expected, and differences are valued. And then our vision
states that Hayesville Elementary will foster a safe, nurturing, and supportive learning environment where all children can learn and grow. So it sounds beautiful, but we have to rewrite that.
So we think it's really important to rewrite that this year because our school dynamic has really changed. When this was written initially, we were a pre-K4 school, and now we're a 3-5 school. And so we just think it's really important that we take a look at it and see if it still really meets what we're striving to accomplish. So there may be pieces of that we keep, but we also have intentions of also listing our core values, just like in the district strategic plan. We think it's really important to have that in place to guide our mission and vision, and that's currently something we don't have in place. So, before we get started with this year, I'm tried. We're gonna kind of spend some time talking about what we accomplished last year. So, we're really proud of the things that we accomplished last year. Berkeley was still part of the Hayesville Primary School last year, so I told her I would take over these slides. But one of the things that we're most proud of from last year is we, as you all know, give grades for conduct and work habits on our report card. And so one of the things we started asking was, how do we give those? And what we found is that those were given in a variety of different ways and done differently from classroom to classroom. So part of the work that we did last year is we developed a conduct rubric, and that's used to determine a student's conduct score. And we also did the same for work habits. And I think that's really an important distinction. As a parent, there are things that I want to know about my child's behavior, but I also want to know what kind of student they are. And they're two very different things. And oftentimes they get lumped together in citizenship. But we really wanted to keep the separate model and be able to give parents quality feedback on each about their behavior as an individual and also their behaviors as a student. So we fill those out quarterly and attach them to the report card so the parents actually get to see the feedback as to how their score was given. So we have implemented school-wide morning meetings. They're called B-Buzz meetings, and so that's the first part of all of our students' day. So it creates a common conversation among all of our students. Ms. Berkeley has actually taken over the B-Buzz for this year, and so it has a variety of topics. So we use it to address any kind of behavior issues that we're having, any kind of procedural issues that we're having, but also to focus on some social emotional learning and just character traits and trying to make that a fun time for students. But it also gives us an opportunity in the office to reinforce when we see behaviors that aren't desired, and it's recently covered, we can easily refer to BBUS. So it just is great for making those school-wide common conversations.
Can you give us a couple of specific things that have been covered during that time, for examples?
I can. So surprisingly, you might be shocked about the recent things we've had to do. Our very most recent last year was bathroom etiquette. Mm-hmm. So what to do in the bathroom and what not to do. And that's simply because we have boys throwing paper towels all on the floor instead of in the trash can or in the toilet and clogging up the toilet, and that became such a common problem. So we thought, well, let's take it down to ground zero and show what do we do when we go to the bathroom and what do we not do. And then another topic is I started a positivity wall in our school, so just a place for kids to go and grab notes of positivity and eventually add notes of positivity. So instead of sending an email out to the teachers describing what to describe to their students, we just put it in BBUS and gave an actual example of how to use it. So it's really good because it's for visual learners. It's great because they see how to do something or how to get better at something, and then it's also great for us. And it makes kids laugh because we try to relate to them. Like we did like TikTok trends last week too. Just like to try to make them laugh and think that we're trying to be cool like them. So it's fun and it's great and the kids really love it. So
okay.
Yeah, sometimes we do like scenarios. So what would you do, you know? And we most recently covered, appropriate ways to greet someone in the morning, trying to work on our conversation skills. Some of those things we lost during COVID a little bit. We're working on some of those things. So that's one of our favorite accomplishments. We have implemented weekly PLCs, that's professional learning communities, and so our teachers gather together at least weekly. And during that time, we're talking about what we're teaching, how our students are grasping those concepts. We're looking at data. And we received training on PLCs from Marisa last year. We're very proud of our efforts and our progress in that area. We implemented Ready Reading last year, and we received training on that, and very thankful for that. We did the implementation of iReady data. iReady was previously used, but maybe not in all grade levels and all subjects, so it became a consistent piece of our school year last year of doing the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year diagnostics, and using that to provide personalized instruction for students. We also made a habit of providing written feedback to teachers routinely, and that's at least twice a month. I would be in a teacher's classroom providing written feedback to them, whether formally or informally. We implemented a system called King and Queen Bee of the Month, and so that is a peer-led initiative where someone is crowned King or Queen Bee. We have 2 per month, and then they pass it on. So administrators and office personnel are left out of that completely, and whoever is the reigning Queen Bee or King Bee passes that on, and they recognize their peer for something that they've done. We completed the first module of MTSS, which is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. That is professional development that we work together to complete, and we did that through distributed leadership, so different staff members or different teams taught different parts of that lessons. Our virtual Wednesdays were great to get that accomplished, and we created a participant notebook as one of our evidences for that completion. We implemented a new referral system for counseling services, communities for students, academic supports, tutoring. And the reason we did that is so we're looking at the whole child, not just their academic struggle, but what's their attendance like, what's their behavior like. And so we get together monthly and discuss those referrals and make sure that we're providing all the supports we have at our fingertips to our students. We also created a revised system for making class lists. And so this is really an effort to make sure that our classes are balanced and that our teachers have an even spread of students that they're teaching each year. So those are some things we did last year that we were completed last year, and I'm very proud of the work that our school improvement team and our teachers did regarding that. So now we're going to talk about the year ahead and what we have planned. And so we're going to start with just kind of our overarching goals, and it should be no surprise to you that the 3 things we're addressing are reading, math, and behavior. So we are, for our math goal, our goal is that all 3rd through 5th grade students will make progress in mathematics as measured by the end of grade test. We would like to increase our percent proficiency from 30.8 to 64% of students scoring a level 4 or 5. So again, when you look at those numbers, they seem really low, but keep in mind that there is that part at the end about scoring a level 4 or 5. We're striving for levels 4s and 5s. Even though a level 3 is considered proficient, it is not considered college and career ready. And so that 30.8% is the number of students last year that were college and career ready in math. And our goal for this year is 64%. That might seem a little arbitrary, but that's actually a goal that is set for us by the state as our long-term goals as part of the Every Child Succeeds Act. And so 64 is the goal they have set for us for this year. So that's the goal we chose. Same thing for reading.
Hang on just a second.
Yes.
And I wanted to point out too that those long-term interim goals are currently under review by the state, because obviously those goals were written 3 years ago, and no one knew that a pandemic was coming at that point, and that so much face-to-face instruction would be lost. I encourage the principals to use these long-term interim goals as their goal, even though it may seem like a pretty giant step to improve 30%, but the way I figure it, that's the goal we have right now, and until the state decides to adjust it, that's what we're shooting for. And if the state changes it, then we'll change. So that's what we're shooting for.
So as you can see in reading, our goal is 36.3% to 53.8%. So you can see our starting goal is higher in reading than in math. That's no surprise, because teaching math remotely is very difficult. And so our students have fared better during the pandemic in reading than in math. As I mentioned earlier, we have a conduct rubric that we send home to parents that provide feedback on conduct. The first two descriptors in that conduct rubric are related to respect. And when we have evaluated our office referrals, both last year and this year so far, the majority of our office referrals are tied back to those two descriptors on respect, which is using kind words and keeping your hands to yourself. So what we have done is the rubric goes from a level 1 to a level 5. A level 4 is meet standard, a level 5 is exceed standard. So if any of our students score below a 3 below a 4 or 5, so if they score 3 or lower, then they're not meeting the standard for those descriptors. So we're providing supports to those students, but our goal is that by the end of the year, all students will be able to achieve a level 4 or 5 on those respect descriptors of our conduct rubric. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the things we're putting in place for those kiddos. And so, as you know, because this is not the first school improvement plan that you've listened to, there are 12 key indicators that all effective schools should have in place. And until those things are solidly in place, then we're asked to write action items for those key indicators. And we're not going to list a whole lot of the words that go into those key indicators, but it's best practices for school. And so we decided to focus our presentation just on kind of the highlights of what we're going to do in each indicator that's not fully met in order to work toward those overarching goals in behavior, reading, and math. So, just to kind of highlight these, I mentioned when we were talking about our beginning of the year data, we're implementing foundations in grade 3. Almost all of our materials are finally here, even though they were ordered in July. But that's an extension of what's currently being used in K2 for phonics. So we want to continue that on into grade 3. The state has provided to us, third grade has always had a reading portfolio, but the state has provided a released reading portfolio for 4th and 5th grade. And so we're going to be using that so that we can specifically provide practice and feedback to students on individual standards. And so all of our grade levels will be using that. We're also working on the creation of pacing guides. We now have a solid reading curriculum and a solid math curriculum, and so we're going to be working on pacing guides for that to make sure that we're on track with both of those programs. We're working on an intervention matrix so that when kids aren't meeting the standard, we have a standard treatment protocol of what we're going to do when you're low in this. This is the intervention we're going to provide. We're working on that. We're trying to help our teachers be more proficient at using the teacher toolbox that's provided through the iReady program. That provides a lot of differentiated instruction, but it's layers upon layers upon layers of resources. And so we're really focusing on training on how to get teachers to delve into that a little bit more and know how to use it. And we also were able, with our ESSER funds, to hire a teacher assistant that's delivering interventions. And so one of our action items is really just to make sure that we're utilizing that to the fullest extent.
And then another part of our key indicators is just individual location signage. So signs around the school that tell students what we expect in the hallway, in the classroom, in the bathroom, in the cafeteria. So just those reminders will be around the school. That way we can enforce it when we're in the hall. Everyone knows it all looks the same, and so they all know what's expected. Recognition of good citizens on a quarterly basis. My mom told me a long time ago that she cared a lot about my grades, but she cared even more about the person I grew up to be. So I feel passionate about that key indicator and recognizing those kids for being good people. Development of behavior reward system for all students. So that's something we're really working hard to do. Just because in a classroom setting, lots of teachers do lots of different things. So coming together as a school to kind of focus our PBIS system around one common goal or one common incentive that students are working for. Daily use and monitoring of the Rhythm app. So the Rhythm app is something that we have tried this year and we are loving it. Each student gets on in the morning. Lots of our teachers have made it part of their morning routine, and they get on and check in, and it's just a short little 2-minute, 3-minute survey about how they're feeling, and I have access as the counselor to all students, and so I can get flagged of students who are feeling anxious in the morning, who are feeling hungry in the morning, who are feeling angry, sad, or happy. So they can check in on how they're feeling, and that's really great data for our SEL people, and so it's been great. That's a new thing that we haven't had, so I love that. Reorganization, if I could read, that would be great. Reorganization of care team procedures to align with MTSS expectations. So how we've done care team in the past and is not aligning with our MTSS process now. So refiguring that to look towards more of the student as a whole, like Melissa said earlier. That's another indicator. Another one that we are working on this year is the transition plans from HPS to HES and HES to HMS. So Hayesville Elementary School to Hayesville Middle School has always been a thing, but it used to be 4th grade to 5th grade. But now our 5th graders are back down in elementary school, and they're going to be making that transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. But then, so it's kind of new, but we've been prepared for that. So our 4th grade teachers can really help our 5th grade teachers in helping them helping our students get ready for that transition to middle school. But a new big one is our HPS students coming up to the Hayesville Elementary School. So just kind of making that transition smooth and coming up with a way to where their first encounter of a new school isn't on the first day of school. We want to make them feel comfortable and safe. So taking that time to really smooth out that transition will be really beneficial. A vertical alignment discussions and planning between grade levels. That's just really beneficial for teachers to know what are we covering in 3rd grade. What do 3rd grade teachers need to do better at? So our 4th graders come up more prepared, or our 4th grade students going up to 5th grade. So just having those conversations of, hey, can we focus more on geometry? Can we focus more on main idea? Whatever it is that we're lacking. So just having that kind of open conversation between grade levels has been great.
I would say probably even more so right now, because there are quite a few pretty wild discrepancies in what kids have mastered and what they haven't, due to how much time they spent fully remote, or how many times they were quarantined. I mean, some of our kids were quarantined 3 or 4 different times. Yeah. And that was 14 days every time they were quarantined. So that vertical planning and sharing of knowledge about kids' learning gaps for the next 2 to 3 years is going to be really important.
So one of the most powerful examples of vertical alignment that I recently witnessed was a discussion of what EOG questions look like in 3rd grade versus what they look like in 4th grade. So we know what skills did they have in 3rd grade and how do those skills need to be advanced for 4th grade in specific types of questioning. And that was a really powerful conversation to realize what are our students used to versus where do they have to go, and looking at it with that lens. Do you want to do this?
Going back in on vertical alignment, also having that really good establishing community amongst your own team. So establishing a shared responsibility in teams and planning to implement PLCs and collaborative planning. So teachers have a lot on their plate all the time, and we're really trying to work on them to kind of divide up that planning. And I feel like COVID taught us a lot of ways to do that. I know personally in 2nd grade when we just kind of divided and conquered. So some would get our math plans ready, our language skills ready, our foundation skills ready. And so I feel like lots of things we learned through COVID we can use now to just really benefit our students as a whole. So just dividing up planning and making sure, like one teacher can be really strong in math while the other's really strong in reading. So just putting your strengths together. And then more intentional inclusion of EC staff and PLCs. So getting our EC teachers in on our PLCs to really help that conversation. What can we do better at? What can we do more of? And really have them help our planning situation. So that way they aren't having to recreate the wheel. We can recreate it together.
So just real quick, just a couple more things that we want to mention. Last year I was really intentional about providing walkthroughs for teachers, but I would just jot down on a piece of paper like, this is what I thought you were doing great, this is something you might want to think about. And so this year I'm working to make a digital walkthrough tool so I can be more intentional with, am I seeing whole group, am I seeing small group? And that way I can provide that feedback to our staff and staff meetings about kind of what are our tendencies and what are our strengths and what do we need to work on. Also want to make sure that we have a fidelity check system to make sure that we're using the programs that we've purchased and spent a lot of money for, that we're using it with fidelity so we get the greatest gains from the programs. So that if we're using it year to year and we're, we can close those gaps. We want to have data chats with our students after each iReady diagnostic. We want to make sure our teachers have a system for providing tier 2 supports in the classroom. Previously, when we had teachers that worked on intervention specifically, and we no longer have that. And so just trying to make sure our teachers feel trained and comfortable with providing intervention in the classroom. We're also going to be working on digital data notebooks for students so that they can go home and then have data chats with their parents about how they're progressing. So we want to review and standardize our process for selecting our Teacher of the Year. So basically, we don't want it to be a popularity contest. We want there to be some criteria for how that's selected. I'm not saying that's how it's been. I think we've had wonderful Teachers of the Year, but just so that process seems really fair and transparent to everyone about how we're selecting those candidates. The last key indicators about family support, we have several different things that we want to do there, which is providing parents with information after each benchmark about how to read the reports that they get, make sure they understand the results that their students have. We want to have monthly curriculum newsletters. We've implemented EdLeo Engage. We want to get back to having parent curriculum nights. Since we haven't been able to have those due to COVID. And we're reestablishing our PTO, so we're really excited about that. We have 2 key indicators that we fully met, so there's no action items related to that. This last slide is our vote from our staff. We had 100% approval of our school improvement plan, so we're really proud of that. So, thank you, that's it. What questions do you have?
Questions or comments?
If I may, the how do I feel assessment, what's that called?
Rhythm map assessment.
So I'm just curious, how does that work? Is there a requirement that students check in, and if they don't, maybe they're experiencing something and they, how do we monitor that?
So I monitor it. Teachers are able to monitor it. They have access to their homeroom, so they can go on and check in, and I really encourage them to do that. And our teachers do a phenomenal job at that. But I can see all of the students as a whole. And it'll tell you at the bottom of of your little data screen how many kids have done it for that day. And a lot of times Rhythm will mess up, but Adrian works really well with getting it working, and they're doing really well on their end. All I have to do is send an email or a call, and they usually have it running. But the kids really love it. At first, they kind of tested me a lot with it, because there's a part where you can write on it, or you can just kind of say how you feel, and it's all emoji based, so smiley faces, sad faces, so they don't have to go into detail, but once they figured out that we were actually seeing it and holding ourselves accountable to checking in on them, they've really kind of trusted us with that information, and the kids have done well with it.
I will say too that the teachers have an intentional time every morning that's for that purpose. So it's not something they have to be, find time to do on their own. So having it built into the routines really helps with the completion piece.
A couple more things and you're actually going to get a presentation on the Rhythm app at the December board meeting, so you'll learn more about that. But what it does too is there are essentially, I think, 5 questions, and they cover the 5 dimensions of mental health and physical health. And the kids, they select emojis just because their generation, that's just, they're more apt to answer through an app with emojis than they are to ask permission to go talk to Miss Berkeley in the main office. That allows her to monitor the answers that they get. Based on those answers, let's say that they check a box that says that they're angry today, the app will push them basically a 1-minute video that they can watch. That kind of talks to them about how to manage anger, you know, and it aligns to our second step curriculum for SEL, which also aligns to our standards for social emotional learning, the CASEL standards. So students are not required to do it. I mean, there are no consequences if they choose not to. The counselors can see if they don't. And they could, of course, that could be a flag to maybe go check on them and ask them why they're not answering it. But, you know, it's not anything that we're requiring. We just think it's a good way to make our counselors' work be more efficient and to be able to show that they're making a difference with kids, or hopefully. Yeah.
And like essentially prevent behavior. So
Right.
if someone is flagging for anger, I can go check in on them.
First thing in the morning.
Right. And make sure, maybe kind of control that and ball that up so we don't take that out on our teachers or our peers around us. So that's kind of the goal of it, is to get ahead of our emotions and teach them how to.
I will say too, though, that my experience has been is that sometimes Ms. Berkeley has then reached out to kids that maybe weren't on our radar as needing support. And I think that's been one of the most beneficial pieces of that, is then checking in on kids that maybe you didn't know needed a check-in.
Because it's the anonymous part of it.
Yeah.
If they know that you're checking, they'll answer. I mean, it's basically just a personal online survey, and that no one else has access to. And a lot of times those kids, they're not going to ask to go see Miss Berkeley in class, because everybody then knows you're asking to go see the counselor. And they don't want anybody to know that they want to go see the counselor. But if they have a sort of a way to do it without everyone knowing, it really works, or it has so far.
Mm-hmm. And many kids are good at hiding what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so we might never know, or their teacher might not know, that they need some support. So.
On a different note, I just want to applaud you for, one, the steps that you're taking to build in student agency and start teaching our elementary students about how to take responsibility for their own learning by having meetings with them after each iReady diagnostic to talk about how they scored, and to set goals for themselves for the next diagnostic and talk about what they need to do in order to reach those goals, and encourage them to have conversations with their parents about that. And then that goes into parent communication. One of our district values in our strategic plan is to improve parent and community partnerships. And I think one of the best ways you do that is improve communication and just be more specific and transparent about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so, for instance, being less subjective about what your grade is in work habits or behavior, and standardizing that across all of the classrooms with a rubric that you can give to parents and say, this is how they get their grade in work habits. This is how they get their grade in behavior, and give them specifics, because then, you know, we talk about wanting parents to partner with us on their children, but then we don't give them the specifics that they need to know what to work on with their student, or maybe how to do it. So a rubric is a great way, at least that specifies exactly what it is that is hurting them on their work habit grade. And so then that allows me as a parent, oh, okay, well, I can help with that. Here's what we're going to do. Or if I don't know a way, you know, I can call and I can ask, hey, what can I do at home to help with this? So I really applaud you for that.
It's a great teaching tool, because we can teach those expectations, and then at midterm we can reflect on those. How did you score? Are there areas you want to score better in? So we're really proud of that piece of our work from last year.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you for your team's help, and I'll entertain a motion that we approve the primary schools. Oh, I'm sorry, elementary schools. Mr. Caldwell, second.
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have the middle school improvement presentation. Ms. Wallace and
I'm letting our sit chair and our
Process man.
Thank you. Work on the presentation.
thank you.
Okay, so
I'm just going to first briefly introduce our school improvement members for the middle school. As far as how it works with us, we do have a representative from each grade level. We have an exploratory teacher, and we also have an EC teacher along with our counselor, our principal, and our assistant principal, or processing manager. And we do have 2 parents, which is really wonderful to have, to get some valuable feedback, especially as we are in the beginning processes at the start of the year, to get that feedback from parents on maybe their insights and thoughts.
So looking at our vision and mission, I won't read these guys fully to you, but we wanted this year to focus on students fulfilling their academic potential, but we knew that there would be some stressors this school year, especially with the past couple of years that kids have had. So we also wanted to make sure that we focused on having a physically, educationally, and an emotionally safe environment for our students to come into, and I think you'll see that reflected in our school improvement plan. And our mission each day is to provide students with an educational environment in which students are challenged, excellence is expected, and differences are valued.
Okay, so same as with Ms. Coker, I'm not going to read every single item here for you, but I am going to say that all of these do line up in conjunction with our core values being reflected with these numerous things that are listed. We do feel like these are all very critical to our school, including consistent respect, honesty, commitment, that all work together to provide high quality instruction for optimal student learning and for their support. I do want to draw particular attention to that last one on our core values. Our parent rep, I told you guys at the very beginning when I introduced them, they are extremely important with us as far as providing that feedback. And our parent reps this year actually added this one for our core values, and I love it. And that is that they want that collaborative relationship to come between the school and teachers and students and families, which oftentimes we try our very hardest, but oftentimes that can be a difficult thing to continue with, but that is definitely something we are going to strive to do across the board and make it an easier way. Leo, I know, is one wonderful way that we've been able to stay with our parents. It's easy to be able to email, easy to be able to post, and then also just be able to check in. They have a private way to message you in one platform. So I think we're making some solid moves towards that, but that was one of the parent add core values for our middle school plan.
So for our 3 overarching goals, they're very similar to what the elementary school had. We have a reading goal, a math goal, and a behavior goal. And so for our math goal, we had that Hazel Middle School will achieve or exceed 52.8% proficiency on the reading end of grade exams. And for math, we have students will achieve or exceed 61.1% proficiency on the math EOGs. Like they stated, that this is a projection from NCDPI, from North Carolina, from the state. And so we have roughly a 5% proficiency from 2019 when we actually had EOGs for the last time. And so we wanted to keep those goals that the state had set. And so you're going to see kind of how we're working towards meeting those goals. We also had HMS will reduce in-school suspensions by 20%. That also came from 2020, because last year we had, the 2 days a week, we had a different schedule. So we wanted to go back to 2020 to get a better indication of where we stood with in-school suspensions. So reduce that by 20% from 231.71 to 185.37. And so there the idea is if we can get our behaviors under control, we can notice those behavior patterns, then we can have the kids in class and learning.
Ms. Coker, those numbers, 231.7, is that days of ISS assigned or hours or what?
That's days of in-school suspension total.
Total?
Yes.
Assigned to all middle school people?
All middle school.
Okay.
So in order to reach these goals, we had 3 top priorities. You guys have heard these acronyms a lot, I'm sure, and I'll go into detail with these, but we have a PBIS key indicator that we're focusing on, which is positive behavior interventions and supports.
We have a social emotional learning or an SEL key indicator that we're working on, and the MTSS key indicator that we're working on, which is the multi-tiered system of support. So for the PBIS key indicator, all teachers employ effective classroom management and reinforce classroom rules and procedures by positively teaching them. We have some of the same action steps that you've heard tonight. We have a PBIS team that was developed that meets monthly. That PBIS team is going to include one member from each grade level. It includes one representative from the EC department and then one representative from exploratory teams. We also created a PBIS matrix, which, like Berkeley was talking about, it shows you the behaviors that should be exhibited in different areas in the school. So how should students be acting properly in the bathroom, in the hallway, in the classrooms, at the break area, so on and so forth. And so we also are going to be having PBIS matrix posters that are going to be made, and we'll have those displayed throughout our hallways and classrooms in the school at Hazel Middle School. Teachers are going to be teaching the matrix so that students understand how they are expected to act in those different locations in the school. And teachers are going to send home at least 2 positive comments each week for students. We want to also focus on the positive with the positive behavior interventions and supports. And we also have a new program that we're going to start this month with a student shout out. And we're going to tie that student shout out to positive characteristics, positive character traits that we will see with social emotional learning. Our social emotional learning key indicator, all teachers are attentive to students' emotional states. They guide students in managing their emotions and arrange for supports and interventions when necessary. We also have a school level social emotional learning team which meets each month. It's comprised of the same types of folks, different teachers, different exploratory representatives, but the same manner. We have included in our master schedule for each grade level social emotional learning time this year. 8th grade has a larger class, and so their social emotional learning time was cut short. And so in order to accommodate for that, we have our school counselor, Miss Emily Hedden, going into those classes twice monthly, and she's teaching social emotional lessons with those students. We, like I said earlier, we have a positive character trait that we're going to focus on each month. So like for the month of November, we have kindness that we're focusing on. So the student shout out will be connected to the kindness that we're hoping that students will show throughout the month of November. We also utilize the Rhythm app check-in each morning. And so after around 9:30, once everybody has, 6th grade is the last group that's able to check in, but around 9:30, Ms. Hedden will go through and she'll check those responses from the Rhythm app. And she can also see students who are hungry or who are angry or who are just having trouble dealing with their emotions that day. And so the idea is that we can intervene with the emotions before we see the behaviors, the negative behaviors that students could show from those emotions. We have this second step curriculum that we're also working to implement during our SEL time. And so Ms. Hedden has gone through the second step curriculum and how to utilize that with our teachers. And they have started utilizing that just this month. And so we're working through that curriculum during our social emotional learning time as well. And we can pick videos or lessons and we can connect that to our characteristic for the month or whatever we see that we need to address that month.
Okay, this one's me here. Okay, so the MTSS, which is the multi-tiered system of support, I'm just going to read this here. The school implements a tiered instructional system that allows teachers to deliver evidence-based instruction aligned with the individual needs of students across all tiers. We did successfully, as a middle school, complete the Module 1. I heard you guys mention that as well last year, so we are into Module 2 this year. A few things that we have that we are doing as far as our action steps towards this full implementation is we have developed a school-level MTSS team that, again, is
made up of the same types. We've got grade level representative. A different one is serving on each of these teams. We also have an exploratory teacher and an EC teacher on that as well. We do have our Encore enrichment schedule. All grade levels do have that fully implemented at this time. What that provides us with is an opportunity for direct intervention or AIG enrichment opportunities for those students. So we work pretty closely with Kimmy Worley for those enrichment opportunities. We do have our small groups. One thing that is wonderful is we do have the data of the iReady for our math and our reading so that we can group the kids accordingly into those small groups. And it is all hands on deck with all grade levels. So if you've taught, the math or the reading, whatever your strongest is, even if your social studies or science, you are still doing a small group so that we're reaching the most kids to the highest level for their intervention needs. A lot of the things that we're also working towards, of course, for full implementation is, of course, strengthening that in our core classes. So I know, like in my classroom, I look and see, okay, the iReady data is saying, with these kids that the informational text might be low. Maybe their vocabulary is a little bit lower, comprehension. Maybe they just really struggle with, the ability to go through a primary source and understand what that tells them. So I'm social studies, so that's where my drive is coming from with the primary sources aspect there. Of course, you use those in all of your classes, but we are, of course, cross-curricular in that we are pushing in, especially in our science and social studies, absolutely any aspect of the reading or the math aspects that we can in our classroom to really meet those needs of those kids. So we might be providing an intervention in our social studies class when we do an architecture project on ancient buildings. I just completed that unit, just as to throw out an example. Science, of course, is using the math and the reading consistently as well. I can speak to my 6th grade team, but we have a multitude of amazing teachers in our middle school that I know are doing the same thing across all grade levels. So I do just want to go into, make sure here that I've gone through everything. And as far as utilization of all of our data, we are continuing. That's what I was going to make mention of here. That's what I wanted to reference here. So one great thing is as they're doing their check-ins, as they're doing their benchmarks that they have, we are constantly changing. If a kid is moving up, then we're going to move them into that next intervention level. If a kid is making very slow progress, we might make the time more intense for longer periods of time, more days a week. So we are fluid with this, and we are constantly looking and trying to see the best way that we can meet the needs of these kids by using this wonderful system as far as really providing those multi-tiered true levels of support for our kids. Are there any questions on my end here?
Another couple of indicators that we are looking at is instructional teams develop standards-aligned units of instruction for each subject and grade level. We have vertical PLC time that we are providing each month for teachers, so we have half days so that teachers can meet and plan those aligned units. When you're in the middle school and when you're in a small middle school, the 6th grade social studies teacher is the only 6th grade social studies teacher. So this provides the 6th grade social studies teacher time to meet with the 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher so that they can take a look at their standards and their units of instruction and see kind of where they align, and even look up further into the high school or down into elementary school as well. So we do that for all 4 core subject areas: math, science, language arts,
Ms. Coker,
and social
how are
studies.
y'all providing that time?
We have substitutes that we schedule, and so those substitutes will spend a half day covering math, let's say, and then that'll be in the morning, and then the afternoon, those same substitutes will go in and they will cover English, for example. And so those teachers will have time to go to the library and connect that way.
So that's an intentional investment
Yes.
Of funds in order to provide that time for your teachers. Good.
Yes. Oops, sorry.
And then the other that we're taking a look at, the other key indicator, is the principal monitors curriculum and classroom instruction regularly and provides timely, clear, constructive feedback to teachers. So we have a walkthrough instrument that we have implemented this year, and the walkthrough instrument, I think maybe Ms. Plemons and Mr. Oberlin shared it previously. Beg, borrow, and steal. We stole the same one. And so that feedback, that walkthrough instrument gives immediate feedback to the teachers. So we go through that Google form, and immediately when we're finished with that, the feedback goes to the teacher, and so they can see what we have to say about their lesson that they have taught that day that we've witnessed. So that's all we have for our presentation. Do y'all have any questions about our school improvement plan?
Any questions for the middle school improvement plan?
A couple quick comments. One, I hope you consider when you implement your shout out for students and character traits, making the recognition part of the board meeting, inviting that student and their parents to come to the board meeting and be recognized for that. I hope you'll consider that. And then two, just in general, for members of the board and the public, I just want to say that one of my goals was to help work with our principals and our school improvement teams to be more intentional and more specific about what they are trying to do. And that being okay with taking risks, that not everything you try is going to be successful, and that's okay. As long as you're trying to solve the problems that you have in a specific way, then that's what this whole process is about. And I'm so proud of the way every school has put together an intentional plan with data for goals and a way to track their progress so that they know if they're successful or not all along. That makes all the difference in the work. And I also think it provides a great opportunity to grow leaders within our schools that, who knows, may be principals one day, because it allows our teachers to be a part of that process and to see what it's all about. And they may take that and say, this is why I never want to be a principal. Or they may say, this is awesome, I'd like to maybe do this one day. So it's just sort of our version of grow your own for leadership, is to allow them to be a part of this process. So I just wanted to say that.
And I wanted to ask, with the student shout out, which I think is fabulous, that right there is also, it's more about positive character traits rather than grades, right?
Yes.
So I mean, you may be getting this student that's not achieving academically, high scores and stuff, but they still have the opportunity to be recognized.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. With our behavior and our social emotional learning, the two merge together, and so we wanted to have a connection with that positive character trait that we're looking at with social emotional learning, and take a look at those positive behaviors regarding that characteristic. And so, no, it's no connection to grades or any academics.
Yeah.
And you may even have a student, now that we're doing a better job of tracking our behaviors and being more purposeful and intentional about support for students. I mean, we may have a kid that in 7th grade had a horrible time with I don't know, maybe use of profanity whenever they got angry. And so they spent a year getting support from their counselor on that. And then we find in the 8th grade during that same respect month that they don't have one discipline issue when it comes to that, which shows growth from one year to the next. That is worthy of recognition. I mean, regardless of academic grades or anything like that, they have made a substantial improvement that will help them down the road, that will help them definitely in high school. So, that could be a possibility as well.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate
Thank
your time
you.
on that. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
So I will entertain a motion that we approve the Hazel Middle School Improvement Plan.
I make a motion to approve this middle school.
Ms. Beckman's motion, second. Mr. Caldwell, all in favor? Thank you. Next we have ending fully remote instruction.
Yes. I guess I'll have everything on you.
members of the board. So the last two action items are for me before we get to the consent agenda. Item number 13 is just a recommendation to end fully remote education opportunities effective December 22nd, which is the end of first semester. You'll recall that when the board elected, I believe in July or August, early on, I can't remember, I think it was late July, to move towards a mask requirement. We were sort of in the midst of a COVID spike with the Delta variant coming through, and the board, along with that vote, they also elected to provide a fully remote instructional option for those parents that chose that for their students. Even though legally the board was not required to do that, the board felt like they wanted to provide that option, but it was only approved for the first semester. It was not approved for second semester. So the board directed me to investigate that. The board also said that they felt like that the stress it put on our teachers to provide the same instruction 3 or 4 different ways last year as they had to was just too much. You didn't want to put the teachers through that again. And so one of the things we could do for our students that wanted to be fully remote was to provide that education by contracting with a third-party company. So we investigated that, and we chose a company named Adminum to provide that in K-8. And we used North Carolina virtual public school classes to provide that at the high school, which we had been doing that for years. We just only provided NCVPS courses at the high school level for courses that we didn't offer face-to-face. In this situation, we had to offer for these students all of their courses through NCVPS, such as the standard English and math courses, because their parents chose for them to be fully remote. Now, funding, obviously that is an expensive proposition, but we were also given about $4 million through our federal ESSER funds in order to handle things like this, to manage loss of learning and to manage the costs of the pandemic. And there are a lot of costs for the pandemic in money and time. This was just one of them. So I just wanted to remind the board that when we started off, we had 40 students that were that their parents chose for them to be fully remote in K-12. We now have 27 that are left fully remote. Some of those students are doing very well. They haven't had issues, but quite a few of them have not done well. A lot of the students that have not been doing well have started coming back, and we have allowed them to re-enroll face-to-face, just because we felt like the further they stayed out fully remote, the further behind they were going to be whenever they came back, and the sooner they would come back face-to-face, the sooner we could help them. But some of our students that are failing have not come back and are still fully remote. I wanted to remind just the board of the cost. So we spent $65,600 for the K-8 students that were fully remote through Adminum. I mean, roughly you're talking $1,500 a student for a semester, $3,000 a year that it would cost roughly to do that. We spent $14,658 for high school students through North Carolina Virtual Public School. So those are North Carolina teachers that just work for VPS, which is a statewide school system. So the total amount spent for the fall semester for fully remote instruction was a little over $80,000. So if we were going to continue this, we could expect it to cost probably another $80,000, which we could do through our ESSER funds, but it would mean cutting some things from our ESSER plan that we have planned to pay we've planned to pay for other things in that budget. And so if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to cut some of those things. Are there any questions about this? I felt like the board doesn't have to really make a decision tonight. You could elect to wait and make a decision, but the sooner you make a decision, the sooner I can have the principals get on the phone with the parents of the fully remote students and let them know what the situation is going to be come January 5th when students return from Christmas break.
So you heard Mr. Cole's, I guess, spiel on remote education. So we can I'll entertain a motion that we end that, or do we want to table that till the December meeting?
I'll make a motion to end for remote.
As of December 22nd, which is
Yes.
the end of the semester.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14 is a recommendation to explore the creation of a resolution to ensure dignity and non-discrimination in schools. This has been brought to our attention a couple of different occasions this fall through public comment. There have been a few school districts that have adopted resolutions similar to this. Of course, you know, they each have a different lawyer, so they all look a little different. I guess I have shared with you two versions. One was from Wayne County schools that school board approved earlier this fall. And then, of course, the other was one from Cabarrus County that Mr. Johnson had shared earlier in the fall. So that's two versions, but you can see there are similarities and differences between those two. And I guess what I'm asking for is whether a motion, if you would like me to explore this with your board attorney, Mr. Schwartz, about creating a resolution that I could present to you at the December meeting that you could then give feedback on or vote on, or depending on how much you liked it. And so this might just be an opportunity for the board to have a little discussion about these two versions. And if there's anything that you like or dislike about either one of them, I guess I'm just looking for a little direction on this, or no direction at all, whichever way that pleases the board.
So we can go one of two ways. We can, obviously, if somebody makes a motion, we can have Mr. Schwartz pursue this. If there is no motion, then I guess it would just end where it is tonight and stay as is.
It would just, yeah, I would not, without a motion, I see no need to engage the board attorney and pay him to do some work if it's not something that we're interested in exploring right now. If you wanted to have some discussion and then come back and revisit it at the December meeting, then you could certainly, as board chair, ask me to put this back on the agenda December 13th, and you could discuss it some more. I think we're just kind of at the point where I need a little bit of direction about what the board would like me to do.
Do I have any comments or questions? Or
Mr. Chairman, I think this is something that we really need to do. We need to have something in place so that we have some specific guidelines. And so I would like to make a motion that we talk about this and bring those two together, discuss those two options, and explore what we can come up with. I like what Mr. Cole said about bringing something, you know, that would combine the two, and something that we could check with with our board attorney and see what he says.
Okay. So your motion is to have Mr. Schwartz kind of combine these two into something that he feels
that would be my motion. Yeah.
Okay. Would meet
legal
those
criteria.
Right. Because we've got to make sure, one, obviously that we understand and that everybody knows that the standards are, our teachers are required to teach that. If they're licensed in North Carolina, those standards that are approved, they have to be taught by our teachers. That's the minimum.
The wording used in the law is that the state standards are the foundation of what we teach. Now, we can add to that.
Correct.
But we can't go less than that. So.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would just, like I said, I agree with Ms. Beck. We need to, in my opinion, have something, but again, to make sure that it's our board attorney fully supports or understands that what we passed and it meets legal measure.
Okay.
So can I note that as a motion to request the board attorney take both documents when this is the needs of Clay County schools?
Sounds good.
That's the motion.
we've had, even though I agree that we've had no, I don't know, nothing's been brought up to us from the school that there's been an issue or any complaints. So I'm not sure. I mean, I get it.
So one thing you could do, I could certainly make mention to Mr. Schwartz that, if possible, that could be noted in the resolution. But that there have been no reports of any of this being an issue in Clay County schools, that we're not trying to correct an existing problem, that we're trying to prevent a possible issue from coming up in the future. Something along those lines. But I guess if you direct me to start the work with Mr. Schwartz, I can then present what he comes up with, what we come up with together to the board in December, and then you can vote on that, or you can give me feedback on it and send it back for further review until we get it the way you want it.
Sure.
So that could possibly be included if we decided we needed a resolution.
So is there any other discussion, or can, Mr. Call, are you seconding Ms. Beck's motion? Is that?
So, just to allow me to clarify and just make sure, Ms. Beck, what your motion was to take the two and have our attorney combine and pull out maybe what he maybe felt was not
Right.
there, and then of course maybe put in what
needs to be.
And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So if
That's exactly right.
then I would say, I can say.
Second that. Okay.
And then we can, from there, we can look at it and make any changes and, okay.
Correct. Yeah, this is not a motion to adopt these as a
No.
resolution. This is to allow Mr. Schwartz to allow Dale to enter into a conversation with Mr. Schwartz to come up with some sort of resolution. So,
Which we would look at and either adopt or
change
look at again or change or make suggestions.
correct.
Okay.
So, is everyone in favor of that? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda. Items in that, remember, can be pulled out separately. There is a note there about policies for first read. Just remember, those are policies that you have been emailed to be approved as a second read in the December meeting. Those are not actually approving those policies.
Yeah, those will be up for action at the December meeting. They're in your Google Drive in a folder for policy updates.
Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Caldwell, all in favor? And then, any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session for personnel and negotiations. Mr. Caldwell.
I'll second.
Ms. Crawford, second. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you all.